Hill now, our friend Republican Senator from Oklahoma, Senator Tom Coburn, also a doctor, along with Dr. Dean. Dr. Dean was saying earlier, Tom, that it was unfortunate that the White House was pushed into an individual mandate. And the New York Times story talks about the MIT professor who helped push them into doing that. Do you think you can have a health care bill, Tom, this health care bill, if the Supreme Court pulls out the heart of it, the individual mandate?
Oh, I'm sure you could. The problem is you're going to have uncontrolled costs, which you were going to have anyway. It's just going to be worse because the mandate helped lower some of the costs by putting that on to younger people. But I'm sure that you could have that. Look, this thing's so complicated. I would tell you my hope, not from the side of what I think about the health care law or not, that if you were to take that out of it, you would be better to get rid of the whole thing and us start over. We still have problems to solve in health care, and the attempt with the Affordable Care Act actually, in my opinion, didn't do it, and I think we have some hard work we need to do to solve it.
Tom, what about the idea of the guaranteed issue and the community rating? That guaranteed issue is awfully important for an awful lot of people who have pre-existing conditions. That goes too, right? According to your view.
It goes too, but the thing is you won't have any insurance companies writing it if you don't have the other side of that where they can afford to spread that risk. You know, that's the whole thing, and we were already seeing individual. Matter of fact, Jonathan Gruber from MIT just reversed his position from 2009 in terms of the individual market and said it's going to rise anywhere from 19 to 31% with the individual mandate. Said he got it wrong in 2009. So look, we have a mess on our hands. It was way too big of a bite. Too many people were putting things in to advantage themselves and their favorite thing. I believe we ought to have some commitment to fixing health care in this country and do it in a way that was not polarizing. This one was. And I think we can actually make some great headway. One way to do that would be a refundable credit for everybody, so everybody has access, and you do it in a way where you don't have a stamp on someone's forehead if, in fact, we're helping them. You can't tell the difference.
Of course, there's no guarantee of universal access in a refundable credit either, but let me ask you about my experience. Well,
it's a whole lot better than what we have right now.
Well, we could debate about that, but what I was going to ask you about, as you may know, in my state, 20 years ago, we put in not only guaranteed issue, but community rating, and you can't charge, unlike the Senate, you can't charge more than 20% over the lowest policy. That's been in place for 20 years. In Vermont, we do not have an individual mandate, and it works fine. So my view on this is the individual mandate is much overhyped. It really doesn't have a lot to do with how well the bill works, and I can prove that because we've had a 20-year experience in Vermont with this.
Tom?
Yeah. There's not a response. You know, if Vermont can do it, he just proves the point. Is the federal government hadn't had any business taking over health care the way that we have. Vermont's doing it. Why can't other states? We can create opportunities for that. We still have the major problem with health care. And the major problem with health care is $1 out of every $3 we spend doesn't help anybody and doesn't keep them from getting sick. And this bill didn't change it, except increase the amount of money that we're going to spend in total on health care.
Jillian, help me out here. What is it about the United States, as somebody that now works here and lives here, but is from another country originally? You may have a better view of what exactly ails our healthcare system. We spend more money than any country on the planet per person on healthcare, and yet, as Tom Coburn just said, 1 in 3 of those dollars are wasted on things that have nothing to do with making Americans healthier. What's wrong with our system?
Well, I think Mark put it very well earlier, which is basically America is pretty much the only industrialized country which doesn't have some kind of universal system. And the key point to grasp is that essentially in other countries in Europe it's embedded and people don't actually notice they're paying. It's all kind of rolled up together with the tax system. And it's very subtle because if you think about it, if it's just taken out of your paycheck as part of the taxes, you don't really start having arguments about it. You don't think about it. The fact that America essentially has a system which forces people to think about healthcare so explicitly makes it much more controversial. But of course, you also have the problem that you have a lot of people, a lot of commercial players inside the American healthcare system right now who have a huge vested interest in bumping up fees and creating lots of middlemen. And there's this enormous irony about the American economy now, which is that two big sectors are finance and health. Now, on one hand, America prides itself on being very efficient and cutting out the middlemen. Just think about Walmart and how you've cut out all the middlemen there. And yet, in both the financial sector, Wall Street, and in the healthcare system, you've created systems where essentially you have endless amounts of middlemen skimming off fees, and that bumps up costs.
Tom, you know, it's interesting, Tom, that you talk about $1 out of $3 not going to making Americans healthier. You look at two systems in our country that just don't work: the healthcare system and our K through 12 educational system. There we spend more money per student than any country in the world as well. But in both cases, there are no market forces, no direct market forces that actually reward success or punish failure the way we have in the rest of our economy. How do we get that in healthcare?
Well, there's a lot of ways to get it in healthcare, and one of the first ways to do it, I would say, is to create. My example is the Amish. I cared for over 500 Amish families. They didn't have health insurance. They routinely bought their health insurance cheaper, their coverage, because they didn't assume somebody else was paying their bill. So one of the things to do, and one of the things Richard Burr and I did, one of the things Joe Lieberman and I did, is when you have a policy that makes you a first dollar coverage, where you no longer become a discerning consumer about what you spend, you become a better consumer when you know you're going to have to make a decision with some connection to the pocket. And we know that in Medicare because we know the people that have supplemental policies consume 23% more Medicare with exactly the same outcomes. So market forces will work. They're not going to be perfect, Joe, but they'll work and they'll help us allocate the resource. These are the only two areas. The only area that grew faster than the cost of health care in this country is the cost of education. And both of those have the same thing. But transparency in the market, we don't have that. I guarantee you, if you give a Medicaid patient in Oklahoma the ability to have a Blue Cross policy instead of a Medicaid stamp, they're going to get better health care, one. They're actually going to get better access as well, and it's going to cost less instead of going through the government program. That's why I want to see something like a refundable tax credit for purchasing health care to put everybody on the same playing field. Because today we have Medicaid, which we're telling, and we now have more people on Medicaid than we do on Medicare. And we're telling people they have access, but they don't really have access because 40% of the doctors, primary care, won't see them, and 65% of the specialists won't see them. So they really don't have access to the same type of care. And give them the ability to actually have care. And if you're trying to find a new Medicare doctor, soon to become, Joe, I know it's not long till you're Medicare.
Oh, that really hurts, Tom. Seriously, it's just unnecessary.
Well, the reason I reminded that is because next year I'm Medicare eligible, and so you know I want to be in your younger age.
I'm not far behind you.
But the fact is go around and try to find somebody that wants to take a new Medicare patient.
Yeah,
that's a quality physician. You know, it's rare.
It's getting tougher, Jillian.
But in many ways, the problem is you have the worst of both worlds. You neither have a proper free market system, nor do you have a government control system. There's kind of nobody in charge. And you shouldn't look outside of the fact that as these arguments go on, this is another major source of uncertainty for the American economy. Because on top of all the fiscal uncertainty, the questions about gas prices, you've got this huge chunk of the economy that healthcare represents, which once again has been tossed into considerable debate and uncertainty about what's going to happen to it.
Well, of course, Medicare and Medicaid are the two biggest drivers of the debt over the next 20 years.
Senator Coburn, no matter what the Supreme Court decides, health care is going to be a big issue in the election. Senator Santorum argues that Governor Romney is uniquely unqualified to make the case against the president because of what he did in Massachusetts. What do you think of that argument by Senator Santorum?
Does that make him less capable than somebody who didn't try to do something in their own state? Yeah, but I don't think it's a big deal. If, in fact, it's thrown out, you're going to see the economy bump up just simply because all the people who are not hiring, because they're not going to, with the anticipation of what it's going to cost and the mandates associated with it, I think you're going to see a big bump in the economy if it gets thrown out.
All right.
Senator Tom Coburn, thank you so much.
By the way, Senator,
Good to see you guys.
let me just ask
Joe,
you.
I'll be there for your 65th birthday.
I can't wait, Tom.
nice.
And by the way,
You're being a lazy boy.
Let me just say, when you decide to retire from the Senate, I'm going to come out to Oklahoma and I'm going to cut the ribbon on your mansion where you have a garage with a car elevator.
Yes.
Is that a good idea politically in an election year or not, Tom? I don't know. I've been out of the business for a while.
Well, I'll tell you, just come out right on some of my John Deeres.
Okay, that's
Very
the
good.
answer right there.
All right. Thank you so much, Tom. Let's see, Tom gets it. Tom gets it.
I just, you know, I don't... Still ahead, Rick Stengel joins us on set to reveal the latest issue of Time magazine. Up next, Blowout. We'll talk to former Senator